we're
Okay, then we'll call this meeting to order if we're ready. Okay, all right, so the time is now 1:31, and I would like to call to order the CCS Budget and Finance Committee meeting for Monday, April 13th, 2026. Beth, can we have a roll call, please?
Anthony,
Here.
Erica,
Here.
Jim,
Yes, here.
Melissa, Mick,
Here.
Ishwar,
Yes.
Tim, and Alex. There. And then it looks like we also have Ryan Livergood, and then for CCS we have Rebecca and Beth.
Great. Rebecca sent us the materials for today's meeting via email last week, and we have an agenda. If you've all got the agenda in front of you, are there any additions to the agenda today? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing none, then let's move ahead to the first action item on the agenda, which is item 5, the review of the minutes of our last committee meeting of February 23rd. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented? Okay, I will move approval of the minutes of our February 23rd, 2026 committee meeting as presented.
Second.
Okay, is there any further comment? Hearing none, let's go to a roll call, Beth.
Anthony,
Yes.
Erica,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Melissa, Mick,
Yes.
Ishwar,
Yes.
Tim, and Alex. I see Melissa now. Thank you.
Okay, then I guess we are ready to move forward with item 6 on the agenda, which is the review and recommended action on the fiscal year 26-27 budget. Rebecca, would you like to take it away?
Yes, thank you. So I sent the budget for review. There are not any major changes from the draft we looked at in February, though there are some. So a couple of things that I wanted to point out is that I did a little bit of rearranging of a couple of things. Drag to move. Okay. So for example, in previous years, we've had oh boy, meeting room rentals in professional development because previously it was like a thing that we did if staff needed extra space for something. But with the amount of meetings and spaces that we've been renting in our building, I did go ahead and move room rental to our rent category as a separate line because it reflects our building space use more than it reflects staff professional development. So you'll see some kind of like rent didn't actually go up 44%. We just moved that line over. Similarly, Datacom, we have data communications. So we'll have last year we had a larger than usual budget to account for overlap, or this year as to account for overlap as we were moving from one AT&T contract to another AT&T contract. That move is now complete. But I also this year moved phone notices and text notices into Datacom because that's where our phone lines had been before. So it's part of like our data communication like package, I guess, for better tracking. Um, so those were the changes. If you have any comments on those or concerns about those being rearranged. And then we are looking to move currently we have an in-house web report server, and we talked about this a little bit at our last meeting. We are looking to move that to the cloud starting next year. So this reflects a full year of hosting of web reports, including backups, hardware, bandwidth, etc. The hardware cost here would recur only every 3 years. So it is not, actually $6,000 a year. We did a cost comparison for total 5-year cost with purchasing a new server, and the 5-year cost over 5 years, it was a difference of $7,000 for the course of the 5 years being in a cloud-based situation versus being hosted locally, in which cloud-based was more expensive. However, it gives us some additional opportunities to do all of our maintenance remotely. Any like hardware failures or replacements are handled instantly as opposed to even a 24-hour contract. So it gives us some extra flexibility from a staffing perspective, as well as make sure that our hardware stays more up to date and functional. And then we are planning, so we do right now pay about $5,000 a year for our website between hosting and managed services. We have talked about this a little bit at executive committee. We have run into some issues with our website and our ability to make it fully accessible. In that they want to charge us $18,000 to make it fully accessible. So for $20,000, we can get a new website instead and get off of their management platform, which has not been super effective. So we do have built into the budget next year out of the development fund some contractual funds to update our website. Well, our website is now 5 years old, so we'd be moving to a new website that would have lower costs long term. We'd also do a little bit of a rebrand. Our logo is 10 years old at this point as well, and it's fine, but like everything's kind of orange. Maybe we don't want orange anymore. So as part of that, we'll be making some branding updates as well. In terms of development, I've also added a second tab for development special software just because we do have, or this tab was in here last budget cycle, but we do have more things coming out of the development fund. So this is just so we can more clearly track them. I am looking at a 9%, almost 10% increase in billings. That includes OCLC. It's like a 9% increase in CCS fees. OCLC is listed at 17% because it includes adding 2 libraries to the OCLC billing, Rolling Meadows and Wakanda. Our fee summary here shows that we would be looking, most libraries would be seeing a 3 to 4% increase. Vernon's looks wild because they had partial implementation last year. So our max dollar amount increase for a library outside of Vernon would be just under $3,000, which is in line with projections from last year to expect $3,000 to $4,500 average increases through 2031, which assumed no new libraries. So bringing in those new libraries allowed us to keep those increases lower than we projected last year. I have some questions for you as a group, but I want to make time for your questions first, or anything that you want me to cover that I did not cover.
Rebecca, is the innovative contract finalized? I'm sorry, I may have lost
Yes, yep,
track
the
of where we
innovative
are on that.
contract is finalized. The worksheet's always kind of a mess because of the addition of new libraries. But we are looking at a 2% increase over last year's ILS contract. So we'll have a 2% increase for 4 years, and then a 2.5% increase our last year. They were really stuck on having that 2.5% increase in the last year of our contract, I'm assuming to set themselves up for negotiation in the future. But we did get them down from their original offer, and with dropping some services because they're now covered in BiblioCommons, we are seeing a savings over previous years. It doesn't look like it in the budget because we're adding more libraries.
So this is all final. This is all okay. All right, thanks.
If there's no other questions yet, and we have time for questions if more come up, I wanted to go back. This is from last year. This is May 25 Governing Board's budget presentation. And I wanted to get your feedback on the utility of a presentation like this kind of annually moving forward, like some budget highlights, illustrating the changes in the budget, opportunities for libraries to look at their individual member fees over time, and then projections for future fees. I'm happy to do it. I had planned on having it for this meeting and then did not get it done, but I'm happy to do it for the board meeting unless the committee feels like our budget is pretty straightforward and this is a necessary use of governing board time.
Yeah, I find this useful. I mean, more projections now than historical data, I guess, to help me budget. I do have a quick question, though. You know, I have board members who have been former librarians in CCS. So one of the questions I get, I just need a short answer for is, we continue adding CCS. You know, there's been a lot of growth. We're adding multiple libraries every year. Why is adding new member libraries meaning our fees really are going up instead of going down every year? Rebecca, what's a good answer to answer a question like that for a board member?
Yeah, the answer is that we've increased services. So the addition of the analytics position last year was a big reason for the fee increase. And last year we operated at a little bit of a deficit to smooth the increase in fees. So the short answer is adding services. The longer.
Yep, services. Does that mean added CCS staff as well? Would that be fair to say, or is services?
Yes,
Okay.
both staff and subscriptions. So,
Okay, that's all I really needed to know.
Okay,
All right,
yes.
thank you.
Well, there's one other thing to add. By bringing on new libraries, we're also reducing the annual rate of increase.
Yes,
So that's the other piece I would add to that, Tim.
agreed.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think some people just think you're more members should mean, you know, the cost goes down, but obviously it's not really the case because the cost of everything keeps going up. So, all right, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so I can work on a similar,
Rebecca?
but yes.
The PowerPoint is useful, but I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
In my opinion, I think previous years, everyone that we talked about the budget and everybody said, yes, the budget committee did it and moved forward, and we were just fine.
Okay.
Though I do wonder, we have maybe some new directors. I don't know how many new directors. If there, if you could find a time where you could invite new directors to do an explanation of this document or an updated version of this document for people who are interested in additional information, that way it's not a voting matter. It's just something that governing board people can self-select into, especially for the newer directors or newer libraries. But I certainly don't need you to go through this for 25, 30 minutes. And I don't think most of the governing board, I think most of the governing board would agree with me. And I think there are so many other things that are potentially more interesting and valuable for our time that I don't see this very useful. Though I agree, it was really nice to have last year.
I think there were a lot of things happening last year, for sure. And it was a year that we saw increases, to Tim's point, after several years of decreases or sort of relatively flat. Um,
I think I'd just like to say one thing, that I think the value of this presentation isn't, I agree with Mick that I don't think the governing board as a whole needs, the CCS budget aspect of it, but I think what's valuable about the presentation are the slides that are relevant to the individual libraries in terms of their fees. It's that selfish nature of the presentation where I think that's where the best value is for a lot of the governing board members. And as Mick said, that maybe that can be accomplished in a different way. But I think a lot of people would find, like, especially this slide, useful.
I agree. I like having it. I don't think you need everything in there. You could pare it down so that it's not as much work for you. And we don't have to discuss it for a long time, but I really found this helpful in
Yeah,
understanding
I think
the overall
something would be
picture.
nice, but nothing extensive as what we had last year, though.
yeah, I think I could do maybe like 5, maybe even fewer slides. Definitely one on projections, definitely one on member fee impact. Was this helpful, like where we saw the biggest changes or not? Again, people are like, the budget's the budget.
Yeah, I like seeing where the changes are. But I agree. I think you could do 5 or 6 slides, take the greatest hits out of this out of
Okay.
this slideshow and just pare it down. It's
Okay. All right. That is easy. I can do that. Are there other questions about the content of the budget or the associated billings? The billings have our new libraries in them. With again, the first quarter is kind of at that implementation rate. And then the rest of the quarters are at the full membership rate. And that's illustrated on the new library worksheet. But no changes to the formula from last year.
Have we heard from Cook Memorial about, talking about projecting if they are they seriously considering or not at this point, or do you have any additional information?
I mean, they're continuing a process. So they had a board meeting, or no, they have a board meeting this week, tomorrow maybe, where their board will be discussing again. So I should have some more information after this. The last meeting, I think they described it as like the facts meeting, where I went and I like presented, and this meeting is going to be the feelings meeting, and I am not invited to it. So, they are still in the running, let's say. if there are no other questions, Anthony, I can turn it back to you.
Okay. Team, are we feeling like we have a budget that we want to present to governing board? I'm seeing
Yep.
nods and thumbs.
Yes, sir.
I believe so. Good job with the whole budget document, Rebecca and team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to make the recommendation for the committee to advance the draft budget as presented at the May governing board meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mick. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim. All right, we'll take a roll call, Beth.
Anthony,
Yes.
Erica,
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, say Jim or Tim?
I said Jim. Sorry. Thank you. Melissa,
Yes.
Mick,
Yes.
Ishwar,
Yes.
and Tim.
You're going in alphabetical order, I can tell now. Yes.
And I'm throwing everyone off.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
All right, congratulations. We have a draft budget. Fantastic. Thanks again, Rebecca and Beth, for putting this together. Great work. All right, the next item on our list revolves around the development fund.
Yes. So per
And we just
our
saw that.
sorry, did I cut you off?
Nope, go ahead.
Per our fiscal accountability policy, the Budget and Finance Committee shall review and update a list of potential uses for the development fund. This is a non-binding list that is, its purpose is to justify the amount we are holding in our development fund. So just because it's on the list doesn't mean we have to or would use it. This year, because we are actively spending out of development, I broke the document out a little bit differently, because we have 3 active spends, carrying over from last year, which are up here at the top. We have planned a website update, and then things that are not planned but could potentially be in this offset cost for new members. This is carried over from previous years. Development needs for either an app or an e-content platform, which are in our strategic plan for a couple of years, like not this year, but in the future. We have in this document, I have some recommendations as well, which again are not binding, and we can revisit in next year's draft budget, which would be in fiscal year 28 to move BiblioCommons to the operating budget, and in fiscal 29 to move the Orange Boy to the operating budget. And then that takes us to that kind of end of that new 3-year find more, so we can decide, like find more is like a kick it down the road. So if we did stagger moving these items to the operating fund, that's what these 2 different values are. So if we are looking at spending all of this for 3 years out of development, we'd be looking at a $750,000 development fund need. Whereas if we were going to stagger pushing these to operating, we'd be looking at $480,000 development fund need for these things that are already in progress. The planned website update is here as well. And then our goal for our balance guidelines are to be between 75 and 150% of the total potentially planned amount. So this potentially planned amount is, if we kept these services moving forward and staggered their moves to the development fund, did the website update, and then had these other potential opportunities or needs for spending in the future, which puts our balance guidelines as illustrated, and our ending balance for both our projected ending balance for this fiscal and our budgeted ending balance for next fiscal would be within these guidelines. On the smaller end, which I think is reasonable, given that we haven't really done research into like knowing we want or need these other things. Our policy doesn't require that we approve this. It just requires that it is reviewed. But I'm happy to make updates or changes or answer questions.
So when these things start, eventually being moved into operations, there is going to be an impact on member contributions, correct?
Correct.
So you're looking potentially at an almost, correct me if I'm wrong, close to 300,000 in additional operating expenses by 29. The difference between the 757 and the 478.
No, by fiscal year 29, we'd see an extra 180 annual in operating. So FY 28, we'd see about $100,000 into the operating fund. And then we'd have that same $100,000 in FY 29, an additional $80,000. So that's looking back to those projections that we'd expect fees to increase. $3,000 to $4,000 a year for the next few years to catch up with these new services.
Do we add to the development fund every year? What are you projecting to add, I guess?
Yeah, the development fund income is our interest goes into the development fund. The biggest piece of the development fund is the Rails support grant, and then new member investment. So the new member investment, this is Wakanda and Rolling Meadows this year. I don't have budgeted Cook Memorial for next year because I don't know that they will join us. So there would potentially be some income there. And then like smaller miscellaneous additions to the fund. So the fund does grow. Bibliocommons, I feel, should be moved to operating within the next couple of years because it is the most likely thing that we will continue to use long term. It is truly like an operational cost to provide an online catalog. The Orange Boy, we have a multi-year agreement. So we could in the future leave it in development until the expiration of our agreement. We'll spend down the fund and that's fine. And see if this is a tool we want to keep using or if we find that the value from it is something we can do internally or whatever. And kind of the same with Find More. Like we've committed to another 3 years. If it is only 3 years, leaving it in development for the duration of those 3 years, great. If this is something that we continue to use long term, is it an operational cost and should it move to operations? But again, nothing is binding on this document, including recommendations of what to move to operating and when.
And Rebecca, remind me, Orange Boy was we signed a 3-year contract?
Yes, I'll double check that.
Okay.
But I believe Orange Boy was 3 years and Bibliocommons was 5 years.
And the Orange Boy's obviously already started, although we haven't gone live with it, but we're still in implementation, right?
Yeah, I mean it's live. We're
Sure.
training staff on it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's not completely fleshed out, but it is up and operational.
Thank you.
Rebecca, I don't remember the policy on the development fund. Does it allow us to have reoccurring expenses year after year?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think of it as a special reserve fund in my head, which is like a one-time thing. You can't do operations from it. And it feels like we're trying to use development as an operations supplement. Have we done this before?
Yeah, there have been a lot of things. I mean, I'd have to go back to like the history. This is, I would say, the largest dollar amount that has been sort of recurring. But we moved relatively recently, we moved the work we were doing with previously Marchive and now Backstage. And we've been doing that for 50 years, probably. I don't know about 50 years, but a long time. And we relatively recently, in the past 5 years, moved it to operating. So I'm not saying it's best practice, but it is something that historically has happened in CCS.
Thank you.
To finish answering Ishwar's question, I'm sorry, Ishwar, I didn't say the other thing, which is that in the past, CCS has specifically billed to add money to the development fund when we've had a need to build it up. So before I started, which was in 2016, so I'm not sure exactly what year, I'd have to go back to some docs. There were some like deliberate overbilling on operating instead of just like a one-to-one income and expenditures to build up the development fund. So anything that is not any billings that are made to operating that are not spent over the course of the year are transferred to development at the end of the year. So that is the other way that money is added to that fund.
Rebecca, I added it in the chat that Orange Boy is 3 years.
Thank you.
Just noting that.
Well, my instinct is to move these things over to operations, but I think your plan to ease them in so that we don't get like a more shocking price increase in 1 year might make sense. My consideration, because we have for new libraries that are coming in, it looks like their development buy-in is $5,000, which is pretty minimal considering they're getting these resources while other libraries have been paying into the development, for the entirety of CCS. And I know we voted on this years ago, and there was lots of discussion about it when Indian Trails came in. But I'm wondering if it's necessarily fair. I don't even know if fair is the right word for the established libraries to be essentially footing the bill for the new libraries when it comes to this development.
So Cook, like, we can definitely revisit the new library investment. Our current policy is just like governing board says what the new library investment is going to be, and considers development fund needs. So Cook has not received a formal quote because despite working on this for months, they have not submitted a membership application to me. But the figures that I've given them include like a $10,000 development fund pay, and that is kind of reflective of what their subscriptions to these tools would be. But to your point, that is like for a year as opposed to the funds that have been in there for previous years. So I see opportunity for debate and discussion.
Anything
this-
else you foresee coming down the pike on development?
So in this like potential section down here, I've got offset costs for new members. So that would be like if the Rails grant for new members went away, would we want to support libraries paying one-time costs to Innovative? Maybe, maybe not. It would be something to discuss and address should that come to pass, which Rails tells me is not likely. They plan to continue the grant. The other, like the sort of generic development needs, I'll have more information on that as this coming fiscal year progresses, because this year we'll be doing research into a system-wide app or centralized e-content, and what that could look like. So that will include like feasibility of either or both. Like, is this something that would even add value to member libraries, or these projects that we just need to say we looked at and it's not a good idea? If it is something that's feasible, then we'd be getting into one-time costs. And again, the idea would be that it would offset spending that you're currently doing. So it would be more of a transfer of spending. But I don't know until we do the research. The other potential change in the future is that we talked about this in relation to Find More Illinois. I would like to do a pilot with a couple of libraries on what it would look like to actually have them drop OCLC for a year or so. Like what we saw with Waukegan is that Waukegan was an OCLC member many years ago, they didn't have it, and when they joined CCS, they signed on for OCLC, and it's the same fee. Like their fee didn't change in the interim. I mean, it like hit those annual increases, but like they didn't get like punished by OCLC for coming back. So I feel like that is my next stage of how can we save libraries money outside of these like potential growth projects is, can we feasibly get rid of OCLC for some or all members and use a lower cost alternative?
I like the idea of staging these in. Unfortunately, I don't remember all of the items that we've put into development and then kind of pulled them out over the years, but I know that we have done that. And they might stay in there for a year or two. So I think that practice, Rebecca, what you're talking about is pretty sound.
Yeah, I think Enterprise was paid out of development for a while. Again, but I don't know how long.
I was thinking there was a position or two, but that's going back a few years ago.
I have never seen staff paid out of development, but I have not been here forever.
Maybe it was a service. I don't remember. It's been long ago.
But all of these would be, I mean, with the exception of Find More, which we're theoretically offsetting with the Rails grant that goes into development, all of these contracts are kind of in their first term. So I feel like that's a reasonable kind of delineation for staggering, you know?
Okay, any other questions for Rebecca about the development fund? Okay, do we have any other business? All right, well, seeing none and having approved our budget recommendation, I believe this committee has accomplished its work for the day. So I would like to declare this meeting adjourned at 2:10 p.m. All in